Hey there, I'm recording this on January the 17th, 2023, and my name is Isabella. I am an activist and freelance writer, freedom of speech, human rights activist, political activist, and targeted freedom of speech, human rights, and political activist here in New Zealand. My training is in multimedia journalism, and I have been targeted by New Zealand state-based agencies since May of 2020. Now, what I thought I would do this evening would be to go through particular street level forms of stalking, organised mobbing, following that has been occurring for me since February of 2021. Now, because this has been going on for a few years, I've chronological order tracked the events, and I've been very careful to document what's happened to me over the last few years. And most of the time it's a horribly isolating feeling, because there's so many people I just can't talk to about this, mainly because they won't believe me, or if they do believe me, it's hard because it's like there's not much they can do to help anyway, especially here in New Zealand, where we've just got this widespread surveillance everywhere, thanks to the huge influx of things like facial recognition technology, which the New Zealand police were trialling without the public's knowledge for a while. They were trialling this technology without the public's knowledge and consent for a few months before this was made common knowledge. So the rampant use now of facial recognition technology and all the big dome cameras they have up on every fucking street corner of every city, of every town in New Zealand, makes surveillance so much easier. But yeah, guys, since February of 2021, I noticed that particular cars were following me around the show. Starting with the obvious two contenders, which are the Alliance Security Company, so Alliance Security cars and Matrix Security cars. So in February of 2021, I had a few very eventful and interesting months in Wellington. My lease had expired on January the 31st, 2021. So I stayed with my sister for a little bit in a city 2.5 hours north of Wellington. And I started noticing very quickly that particular cars were following me around, Matrix Security and Alliance Security. Now, these cars would just creepily sort of slowly drive past me wherever I showed up, anywhere I showed up. I could be literally walking anywhere, and all of a sudden, really slowly, an Alliance Security car or a Matrix Security car would just be following me. And these cars would often go around the corner a few times. So it wasn't just a matter of me going somewhere or walking somewhere and these cars driving past me once. No, what would tend to happen is these cars would drive past me multiple times in one day. So, for example, they would drive around the block and drive around the block a second time, or I would notice the same cars following me around in terms of these private security company cars, which I thought was quite strange. Now, at this point, I wasn't being noticeably interfered with by the New Zealand police, so I had no reason to think that that would be an issue. Don't have a criminal record, never have, probably never will. So at this point, I was not being targeted by the New Zealand police. That didn't start till a bit later on. But it was purely these security cars, which was really, really creepy and very, very alarming. Then there would be things like community patrol cars that would just, drive past me. So then there'd be stuff like community patrol cars. It went from alliance security, matrix security to community security cars that would just sort of follow me around the show. I also had precision, these big vans that would just have the words precision on them. I also had vans with the word target, and that's something I noticed that would happen a lot, especially since February 2021. I've had these vans with the word target following me around the show. And another one is deadline. So I have these vans that say the word deadline on it. So I've got target and deadline are things that are actually sort of quite subliminally telling, because obviously I am a target of the state-based agencies. So to have a van with the word target on it is kind of like, and then another van with the word deadline. The deadline is one that I get quite a lot, and this is something that's been happening to me every single day since I've been in Auckland. So every day I've got vans with the word deadline on them just following me around the show in Auckland, which is really kind of unnerving. And it's usually those types of vans. So I've got the private security companies that are just really, really creepy. And you've got target, deadline, and what's the other one? Now, I'm just trying to think. There are probably some others, but I just wanted to go through those ones because those are the main ones that stick out. Precision's also one that I get quite a lot. Most of the time it's the private security company cars that will just sort of follow, like any form of private security. And then there are like the community neighbourhood sort of community patrol cars that will follow you around. But it's for the purposes of intimidation, I think. And also these particular departments that we have here in the New Zealand Police have threat assessment unit squads, which basically mean that they can deem anyone a potential terrorist for having any kind of ideology which they consider to be far right ideology, or they consider to be hate speech or fascism or white supremacist. So it's fascist, white supremacist, hate speech, and the far right. Conservatives, patriots, nationalists, people that care about New Zealand's sovereignty, people that care about, the outcome of the COVID-19 response we've had in New Zealand, conservatives, nationalists, patriots, anyone that really cares about the sovereignty of New Zealand could be labelled a white supremacist or a far-right extremist or someone that believes in hate speech or something along those lines. So within every department of the New Zealand Police, they have these threat assessment units, which are basically to closely monitor particular individuals that have been singled out as having problematic opinions. And I just want to point out that if you're attacking someone or going after someone based on their ideology, that's exactly what Hitler did in, the Second World War, when he was going after not just Jewish people. And I want to point out that in the Second World War, it was not just Jewish people that were targeted. It was also people with intellectual disabilities, people with mental illness, people that were homosexual. Gypsies were also targeted. So it was gypsies, it was people that, homosexual, gypsies, people with intellectual disabilities. You could be sent to a concentration camp if you were a gypsy, if you were gay, if you were homosexual. If you had an intellectual disability, there were actually hospitals in Germany that were killing and murdering people with intellectual disabilities and murdering people with physical disabilities. So it wasn't just the Jewish population that Hitler singled out and targeted. It was also people that had particular ideologies as well, people that supported or voted for particular things. So when you have a system where people are being singled out based on their political beliefs or their ideology or their religion or anything, and you're going after people based on their quote-unquote ideology and their opinions or their religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs or political beliefs, that is it's disturbing as fuck, to be honest. And it's happened before. It happened, in World War II. It's happened in a bunch of countries. It's happened in a bunch of communist countries as well. So these units are really, really disturbing because they set up all of these community patrolling community neighbourhood watchdog patrolling centres and these community patrols around particular people. And sure, there might be the odd terrorist, but it's few and far between, and most of the time these are just innocent people who happen to have unpopular opinions or the wrong opinions. So for me, I guess it's really creepy when I have these private security agencies follow me around. And I'm sure I've had people like Thompson and Clark in the mix, because Thompson and Clark are usually people that are, they're a private security company in New Zealand, and they're referred to by the intelligence agencies in New Zealand. So the NZSIS refer people to private security companies like Thompson and Clark. And the New Zealand police refer individual citizens to these security companies like Thompson and Clark. So the NZSIS do it, the New Zealand police do it, a bunch of other agencies contract companies like Thompson and Clark to covertly spy on New Zealand citizens every single day of the week. And they do, and it's very intrusive and it's very, very disturbing. Last year was just a fucking nightmare of a situation because I was essentially driven out of Wellington, which was the city I'd been living in. I was travelling all up and down the North Island trying to find out what the fuck to do, because I felt like I desperately wanted to come back to Wellington, but every time I came back to Wellington my situation got worse and worse and worse. I had a bunch of personal issues that I was dealing with at the time. I was being sadistically sexually harassed as the result of going to the New Zealand police about a rape and a sexual assault from a young man I had been intimately involved with for about 5 weeks. And so I had personal harassment as well by virtue of the sexual harassment that I was going through. And the sadistic levels of sexual harassment just made all of the other harassment even worse because it was personal. So last year I was essentially travelling up and down the North Island of New Zealand trying to figure out what the fuck to do. And the consequence of that was that has been routinely used against me, and me travelling up and down the North Island during the year 2022 has been routinely used against me in terms of, not just in 2022, because I was travelling up and down the North Island for some of 2021 as well, to be fair. This wasn't just 2022, I was doing this in 2021 as well. Both of these, occurrences have been routinely used against me by psychiatrists and various other people I've been referred to because apparently I exhibit paranoid ideation, whatever the fuck that means. I had a hearing a few days ago, guys, on Tuesday. So I'm recording this on the 17th. I had a hearing a few days ago where a psychiatrist basically said that I lived a transient lifestyle and that people couldn't understand why such an intelligent young woman was travelling around so much and moving around so much. And no one could understand why such an intelligent young woman was moving around so much, which just makes me sound dodgy as hell, but also this has been routinely used to discredit me, the fact that I'm this young woman who happens to be travelling around, who happens to be moving around from place to place. I just want to point out that this was something I was driven to do. It was something that I wouldn't have done if I didn't have very, very real concerns that my physical safety and my life was in danger at the time. I had some serious concerns that my physical safety was in danger, and I had some serious concerns mainly because the New Zealand police would not help me. And the fact that the New Zealand police showed repeated negligence when I would go to them to file up police reports and make follow-up statements in the central Wellington police station, the fact that there was repeatedly negligence and no help meant that I felt that my physical safety was in fact in danger after multiple complaints falling on deaf ears. I've got a long list of email correspondence with the New Zealand police about this, and you can see, just how apathetic they were to my situation. Any paranoia, I just want to state right now that any paranoia that I might have shown is because I'm responding to a very real threat. Usually, if people are paranoid, there's a real or logical reason behind it. There have been countless other people over the years who have been accused of quote-unquote being paranoid, and they've ended up dead, murdered, assassinated. I'm just going to name 3 people that were repeatedly accused of being paranoid in the years leading up to their deaths. Now, one of these people was Kurt Cobain. He ends up dead. Another of these people, of course, was Princess Diana, and she's going to be the biggest one I'm going to name. Princess Diana was apparently paranoid. Lots and lots of people that worked in the castle and worked for the royal family repeatedly said that Princess Diana was paranoid because she thought that people were wiretapping her phone calls and bugging her phone calls. She thought that she was being bugged. She thought that she was being followed. She thought that people were wiretapping her phone calls and listening in on her phone calls. She was repeatedly dismissed as being paranoid and showing signs of hysteria. A few years later, she ends up dead. We also have people like the super soldier Max Spears Bates, who was also repeatedly accused of being paranoid when he died in very mysterious circumstances, vomiting 2 litres of black fluid with a black mark on his forehead, and ends up dying on a sofa in Warsaw. After speaking at a super soldiers conference in Warsaw, he also ends up dead after vomiting 2 litres of black fluid, a black mark on his head. He dies on a sofa in Warsaw shortly after speaking at a super soldiers conference. And there we go. There are 3 people that were repeatedly accused of experiencing paranoia that ended up dead. And I'm not saying that everyone who is paranoid has legitimate reasons for their paranoia. I'm just saying that the majority of the time there are logical reasons for paranoia. And what really pisses me off is that the psychiatrist at the hearing a few days ago, which was held at the Buchanan Centre here in Auckland, just kept going on about the fact that, no one understands why such a young, intelligent young woman is travelling around so much. And then in a appointment I had with him the previous week, the week prior, he said to me that I lived a transient lifestyle and that my lifestyle was very transient. And again, he repeated, "We don't understand why such an intelligent young woman is travelling around so much. Why are you being so transient? Why are you moving around so much?" Again, I didn't choose this. This is not something I chose. This is something I genuinely felt like I was driven to do because I had no help from the New Zealand police. The state-based agencies would not help me. In June of 2022, I approached two prominent lawyers in Wellington in terms of I emailed them a basic summary of my situation. I gave them a general overview and a basic summary of my situation. I asked them if they could perhaps help me, and they both said, "We're sorry, we're far too busy to help you at the moment." So I have approached lawyers about this. I have approached two lawyers in Wellington to help me with my situation. I have also emailed a third lawyer who is based in Tauranga, and he's a very prominent lawyer that advocates for human rights activists and for journalists, but particularly journalists. So I thought that he would be a good person to get in contact with. Now, I didn't hear back from his office either. So the lawyer in Tauranga and the two prominent lawyers in Wellington, neither of these three people I heard back from. I didn't hear back from, well, I did hear back from one of the lawyers in Wellington who told me just blanketly that he was too busy to help me. The other two lawyers I did not hear back from. So out of those three people, one of the lawyers heard back from, the other one in Wellington I didn't hear back from, and the lawyer in Tauranga I did not hear back from his office at all. So I have tried to reach out to relevant people in the hope of getting some support. I realise it's a very, very sensitive issue and a sensitive topic, so unfortunately I can't talk to regular New Zealand citizens about this because they're not facing these same dangers and threats that I'm facing right now. I'm really, really sick of being tailed and followed around by Allied Security, Matrix Security, Precision, big vans with the words Target and the words Deadline on them. I'm getting really, really sick of it. I'm also getting really sick of geniuses with big fuck-off headsets and like really high-tech, techie headgear on, dark sunglasses, black sunglasses, really shifty-looking people follow me around and tailing me everywhere I go. It's really disturbing, and because I'm currently on a community treatment order, I'm seriously concerned that it limits my ability to talk about things even more because I'm experiencing quote-unquote paranoid ideation. Now, on the 1st of October 2022 last year, I was violently assaulted by three members of the New Zealand Police at the Inter-Islander Terminal in Picton in the South Island. I had big bruising all up my right and left arm. I had a huge bruise all up my right calf muscle and all up my right leg. I fucking wish I had taken pictures of this as evidence. But yeah, lots of bruising up my right leg, my right calf muscle, both of my arms, lots of bruising. Physically restrained, beaten. I had my handbag seized. I had my luggage seized. I had my backpack seized. They went through everything in my handbag. They went through jewelry, personal items, money, jewelry, and two articles that I had written by hand were subsequently confiscated. These articles were draft articles that I had written just on parchment paper with green ink about my concerns about various hate speech laws being passed in New Zealand that would criminalize particular people with ideology who were expressing unpopular opinions, and would also set a precedent for the stigmatization of particular religious organizations and religious groups, because various Christian sectors in New Zealand have been singled out during New Zealand's COVID response. Chris Hipkins signalled out a particular church congregation in Auckland in 2021 who were making a choice to conceal the identities of people who had tested positive for COVID and who weren't dobbing them into the COVID compliance centre. So these people at this particular church congregation ceremony were obviously a close-knit community of people. They felt like they were protecting each other by concealing the identities of close contacts, because obviously they just didn't want to get in trouble. It's something you would do for a close friend. It's something you'd do for a family member. It's something you would do if you didn't want persecution and someone to be in trouble. They just didn't want them to get in trouble, so they concealed their identities. Chris Hipkins was furious and singled out this particular group of churchgoers. Now, I'm not a Christian, I've never been Christian, but I think that signalling out particular religious groups is fundamentally wrong. And these hate speech laws would criminalise the publicly expressing opinions and views which would be deemed unpopular opinions, not necessarily hating anything, no insults necessary, just an unpopular opinion, an unpopular public opinion expressed, an unpopular view. And my concern would be, how would that be regulated? Who would get to decide what's hate speech and what's not? Who gets the ultimate authority in deciding what constitutes as hate speech and what constitutes as freedom of expression and freedom of speech, which is a fundamental human right, and a human right we have in the New Zealand Bill of Rights. Now, I had some serious concerns about the proposition of these hate speech laws being passed and put through by the Labour government, and there have been countless drafts for these particular laws to be passed over the last year and a half. I wrote an article about it, a draft article about it. I wrote out particular examples from the blacklisting of people over in the United States, like, for example, putting people on no-fly lists and particular blacklisting of people over the United States. I put particular examples from different